Good to see all of you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
We're so excited to have all of you today to kickstart, the month-long conversations that we're going to have for IWD. I think conversations like this are so important because women like you are so inspirational in your journey. Yet at the same time, I know you're so passionate about also coming out to share really about the struggles and owning your journey. So it's going to be really inspirational for all of us today. Maybe before we start, can we just go around the room to do a quick introduction of ourselves? I will start and I'll hand the time to Grace. So hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the co-founder of Love Bonito and I'm calling from Singapore. And I'll hand it over to you, Grace.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Chan. I am in Hong Kong. Luckily, it's not 6 a.m. over here, or else I would not be able to get it. But you look really good, I gotta say, for that.
I know, I agree.
Super.
I mean, I'm a mom of two. I'm, really married and also just striving to find a balance between work and life. And I'm really happy to be here today to speak with all of you.
Thank you, Grace. Joan.
Yes, my name's Joan Nguyen, and I'm based in LA, and it is indeed 6 a.m. right now, which is perfect because my kids are upstairs and they're sleeping, so hopefully they don't wake up for a little bit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Boomo, which is obsessed with the future of parenting. I have a wonderful husband named Brandon, two lovely little kids, and just really excited to be here with Rachel and all these lovely ladies.
Yay, thanks for joining us. And last but not least, of course, we have Jillian.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Jillian. I'm from Manila, Philippines. And I was the former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan Philippines and former deputy editorial director. And I have chosen to be child-free. And that's something that I am looking forward to discussing with all of you later. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited. Personally, when I caught up with all of you on your stories and journeys, there's so much that I want to talk about. And especially today, right? Especially we know that throughout history till today, the central role of women in society has really ensured the stability, the progress, and long-term development and success of nations and societies, right? But despite the great deal of progress over the last century, there are still a lot of traditional societal expectations that exist for a woman today. So we want to talk about, the different roles that we play in life, the different hats that we wear, and also the different kind of pressures that you face in your journey. But before we do that, I think it'll be great to hear from all of you, what was it like growing up for you? I truly believe that our upbringing has influenced our choices and has also, shaped who we are today. So maybe I can start with Joan. You want to share with us, what was it like growing up for you?
Yeah, I mean, my upbringing definitely defined me so much. I'm a very proud daughter of two Vietnamese refugees. So my parents came to the United States in 1980, fled Vietnam, of course, and really came here with nothing. And that really defined me because my mom was like a seamstress. So she worked 14 to 17 hours a day in front of a sewing machine. My dad fixed TVs.
Wow.
Yeah, we lived in like a one bedroom apartment. I still remember like what we used to eat was like a boiled cabbage and water. And then when my mom used to put an egg in it, and the boiled cabbage water was our soup, and we would eat the cabbage, and we would eat the egg with like white rice. And that was like so comforting to me. And it still actually weirdly is comforting for me, right? It just reminds me of my childhood, even though it's so simple. Um, and, I think that really defined me because it made me see my mom work so hard, cook every meal for my family. And, I think about my life now and I feel so fortunate. And I feel like, man, if my mom can work 14 to 17 hours a day doing backbreaking manual labor, take care of our kids, have a smile on her face, make sure we're okay, happy, raise us to be good humans in the future. Feel like anything thrown at me, an investor saying no, a product not launching on time, whatever it is, like it's going to be okay because I learned so much grit and resilience from my mom and my dad too, but really my mom because she really bore the brunt of course, child rearing and everything.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. We'll get back to that later. I'll hand over the time to Jillian. Jillian, you want to share with us, what was it like growing up in your family and environment?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Joan, that your childhood influences and impacts the choices that you make as an adult. And I grew up in the Philippines, as I mentioned, and I have two older sisters with huge age gaps from me. So I'm talking about like 14 years from the eldest to myself, and like
Wow.
11 years from the middle child to myself. I'm the youngest, and that definitely made me feel like an only child in college, because both my sisters were like married and they had their kids by the time I was in college. And I grew up with a mom who was very protective of me. The Philippines has a very traditional conservative culture. And my mom was very protective of me, like even to the point where, even though I was already in college, just crossing the street to go to, let's say, a restaurant to eat with my friends, I'd have to text her. She would require me to text her. Like, she was
Wow.
very, very strict with boys, with with nighters, all of those things. And I'm very grateful that she was a full-time mom. She was very present in my life. And I do know in retrospect that she made so many sacrifices at the expense of probably her happiness and her, like personal growth at times. And that impacted, like my choices also growing up. And I'm very grateful for those sacrifices that she made for me. And I know how big a responsibility it is to raise a child. And I've seen it through the eyes of my mom and through my sisters, my two older sisters, because I grew up with them raising kids.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We need to talk about that later, Jillian.
for sure.
But
Yeah.
it sounds like, both of you have shared your journey, and it's really, you have had strong women figures in your life growing up. Grace, would love to hear from you.
Okay, so I was born in Hong Kong. I have two siblings, and one is a twin brother whom I am twins with. So it was definitely very unique, I would say, and special to grow up with a boy, next to you all the time. And, he would try to get and know your friends. No, I'm kidding. That's not what this is about. No, and then we moved to Canada when we were 5 years old. And it was just on a whim. My mom just wanted to really get out of just working all the time. As you know, Hong Kong culture it's very fast paced, very aggressive. And she wanted to have an environment where we would grow up without all of that pressure. And she also her job to be in Canada with us while my dad traveled back and forth. And just that alone, I mean, that sacrifice is something that you take for granted until you're older and you really know what it means, Like as working women, just to know, like, can we give all that to do something else is incredible. And something that was really memorable from our childhood was that even when we were in high school, my mom used to bring us hot lunches every single day. So she would arrive at 12:30 because lunch was at 1, and she would sneak into our lockers and school would be like, "You're here again." She would sneak in, put our lunch. Sure, we had that. And growing up in a Western culture, everyone had like sandwiches, or they would buy food in the cafeteria. So having that hot lunch was like, wow. You know the Tupperware where they have the hot water on the bottom to keep everything else warm?
Yes.
So I mean, my siblings and I about that now, and we're like, even the small little things that she did for us were things that helped us to grow up knowing that we were extremely loved. And I think that's something that we really need to showcase more, really, in the world, especially now. So
amazing. So, as and Joan, for yourself, growing up in such an environment, especially, having seen your parents really work so hard, to also bring you and your family up, especially out of Vietnam into US. What were some of your dreams and aspirations that you had as a little girl?
I mean, for me, it's funny. It's like, when your parents are amazing when they don't make you feel like you're missing anything at all. So I didn't grow up actually feeling like I didn't have what other kids had, right? I felt really normal and really loved. So it wasn't like this like deep ambition to do anything bigger or greater, like a Cinderella story in a sense. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, I think seeing my mom so close, I always wanted to go into fashion, which I actually did for like a little bit. And that's like
I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah. So I did that for a little bit, for like a year, and that's how I met my co-founder, Chriselle.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to do that, but I just, I just really wanted to always have fun and have joy in my life,
Mm.
and just continue to work hard like my mom, but didn't really feel like there was like this deep yearning to like do something greater as a child, at least.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. And so, after that in your journey as well, did you expect to be the woman that you are today, wearing so many hats, being the CEO of, a great company? What was it like in the journey?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I was in high school such a bad student. So I'll say that publicly now, but I
I
was
think all
not,
of us.
yeah, I was not the best student. I was very distracted. I was the kid who would ask for a hall pass and disappear and never come back. I'm not, for all the young girls and boys listening to this, like, don't do that. Just stay in school. Don't disappear with a hall pass. But yeah, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So yeah, I never, nobody ever plans to be, a founder or a CEO or anything, right? You just kind of like navigate your life. So definitely didn't plan this. Wasn't raised to like be this, but really grateful to be here. And, a lot of the lessons that I learned from my parents, it really prepared me for this in terms of just being really gritty, being really resilient, working really hard, and not making excuses for anything, really.
Awesome. And I would love to go deeper into, especially you and your journey into getting where you are today. But I will, I think one of the things that we hear a lot today is, women having it all. And sometimes, other women are always, asking, like, for example, yourself, Grace, how do you have 2 kids, yet, have a great career, have a great marriage, have a great family? What is it like, hearing such, comments are also, women asking you, how do you do it all? What is your definition of doing it all? And do you think that you actually do it all?
I think, first of all, like starting from the beginning, I would have to admit that I was the one who gave myself pressure into thinking that I had to do it all, because I grew up, I would say, quite in a comfortable family. And I felt like,
Yeah.
given that I have this, I should take advantage of it and do the best that I can. And, it was almost like a state of, I want to show people that I can do it. But then I realized that as you move on forward with your life, there are so many roles that come with, who you are. And obviously now, like, being a mother and being a wife is something that's first and foremost, but I still hear all these voices, or during interviews, people being like, oh, you have it all. How do you do it? Please give us some advice. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know I was trying to, I was preaching this message and trying to push this agenda to you guys, because I'm a superwoman. I'm just like, and I feel like, unfortunately, in a way, social media can be misleading into leading people to think that we are doing it all. And perhaps I do try to admit more positivity and, trying to, ascertain certain roles in my life. But at the same time, I have to say I'm not 100% at everything at all, like, far from that. And I mean, right now, my kids are sleeping, so that's fine. But if they're not, basically running around chasing them, I'm sure you guys know what I mean. And, I have to put down my phone. Maybe work won't get finished, but that's okay. And if some days, family, there's some issues there, or there's issues that I can't resolve, my kid is sick, I don't know what to do, I bow down and I'm like, I need help, and I think it's okay to say that you need help from others, or that you can't do it all. And the reality of that is so reassuring that it makes me feel like, all right, I can get on with this, because I'm willing to admit that I'm not. And, like, it's so cliche, but it's true, like, why is it such a bad thing not to be able to do it all, right? I think it's a good thing to humble yourself and admit to yourself what you can and cannot do. So that's how I feel with my roles right now.
I love that, Grace. And I know you personally too, so I know that you have had to make different sacrifices, especially, in the season when you're having kids. You make a choice. You made a choice to take care of your boys. What were some of the sacrifices? Or, I always like the analogy of, we juggle different roles, different priorities, and the balls, right? So what were some of the balls that you had to let go in this season?
I remember when I was first carrying my firstborn, there were, I met a mom and she said like, oh, once you have your kid, you probably won't work anymore. And I was like, no, I will not be that person. I will keep on working. And then
Yeah.
eventually I had my kid and I was like, oops. I- but I feel like the reason for that is because I was so happy and content with putting aside work for the most part and just, taking care of my kids, maybe taking on small, maybe I'm not filming a drama for 3 to 6 months. Maybe I'm doing
Yeah.
some jobs. And that makes me so happy. Or I'm creating content and people see it and they're like, that brings joy to us. And I realized, you can shift and you can
Mm.
alter and change is not a bad thing. So that's what I
Awesome.
do now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And Jillian, what I would love to hear from your perspective. What do you think is one misconception that most people have about women having it all, especially for you and your journey?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Grace. We put so much pressure on ourselves to fulfill every role that we set out to fulfill as women. And I definitely used to think that we should aspire to have it all at the same time. But now,
Mm,
as I've gotten older, like in my 30s, I feel like there is a season and a phase for every single thing. Like
mm,
we should be able to tell ourselves, okay, I'm going to set this aside for later. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to save this and I'm going to do this. And there's
yeah.
beauty in that, like just allowing ourselves the space to breathe and choose and give ourselves the grace to take a break.
Mm,
I'm actually at a point in my career where I recently resigned from Summit Media, the company that I worked in for 9 years. And for 15 years straight, I was hustling in my career. I got my dream job. I was the editor-in-chief of Cosmo Philippines, and I was able to basically tick off the boxes in my bucket list. But then I
mm,
realized, like, especially during the pandemic, that I'm ready for new things. I'm ready to take a break. And it was a long process to arrive at that point where I
yeah.
was able to kind of like forgive myself, right? To
Yeah.
because there's guilt. There's definitely guilt that I'm gonna take a break. And friends and family and my support system have been telling me that, hey, you shouldn't feel guilty for taking a break. And I think as women, we definitely need to be kinder to ourselves. Like I read this really nice quote on Instagram, like even flowers don't bloom the whole year round, so
Mm,
there should be that grace and that just permission for us as women to have our highlights and our blooming days and our like just time to take a break, and
mm.
just reset in general. And I think I definitely believe that we can have it all, um but not at the same time.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree with you. It must have taken so much courage, Jillian. I would love to go through your thought process, especially in having the courage to take a break, especially in the world today where hustling and constantly being on the
Yes.
go and working is glamorized or over glamorized. What was going through your mind when you were considering whether to take a break or to continue working?
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of my job is done. I was in the company for 9 years. As I said, I was able to already make an impact with the job that I had. And, I was able to build a self-sufficient team.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, maybe it's time to take care of me. And
Mm.
I'm not going to lie, it was difficult during the pandemic. It's still the pandemic. And it's difficult because, it puts things into perspective. Like, what
Yeah.
are your priorities? Maybe I should spend more time with my aging parents. Maybe I should spend more time with my husband,
Mm,
like, and we recently moved to a new place here, and, I'm busy, like setting things up and moving stuff and all of that. And, like, there are other aspects of my life that I've kind of set aside that I get
mm.
to do now, like even hobbies in general. Like, I'm into plants now. I'm roller skating. I'm learning, like
Cherry
it's
tomato.
so, yeah, like I'm making up for lost time in a way. And it's wonderful. It's a great experience. And I'm like starting from scratch. And I'm very grateful. I do acknowledge that it is a privilege to be able to take this break. And I'm very grateful to my support system, especially my husband, for supporting me and for being there for me during this time in my life. But it's really
Mm.
exciting and scary. And, I'm just embracing it all. Yeah.
Well, kudos to you for staying true to yourself and being so authentic and being so brave. I think, Jillian,
Thank
I
you.
would love to have you share more with us, as I'm going to talk about motherhood, and I would have love to have Joan and Grace share with us more about that. But for you, Jillian, you made a choice to be child-free. Share with us more
Yes.
about the decision.
I have to admit, Rachel, I wanted to get this right, so I have my notes and my iPad over here. Because
Wow.
I'm representing women who have chosen to be child free, so I want to get this right. So I think that choosing to be child free is very personal for every
Mm,
woman that you ask, and there's never a single answer that could fully explain their choice. And to me, it was a culmination of all of my life experiences and what I have witnessed growing
yeah.
up that made me to decide to be child free as early as in my 20s.
Mm,
And there are three reasons mainly. So the first reason is, well, as I mentioned, I grew up in the Philippines with two older sisters, and because we had a huge age gap, I really was able to witness them as mothers and all the joys and pains and hardships that they went through as moms. And feeling like an only child in college, and having a mom who was very much there for me and present, and seeing the sacrifices that she made, I knew that it was no easy task to be a mom. So
mm,
that was the first reason. The second one is, I opened up to you, Rachel, yesterday when we were catching up, that my eldest sister, who's 14 years older than me, she became a widow at age 30. And
mm,
she has three kids. She had three kids then. She's actually great now. She remarried. She has another kid, so she has four kids. But during that time in her life, I was able to see the struggles that she went through the eyes of my nephew and nieces as well. And thank God that she had that support system, us as a family, being there for her. But I was able to, basically, it was an eye-opening experience witnessing my sister go through that life experience. It's very traumatic, and my brother-in-law died from an aneurysm, so it was just
mm.
in a snap gone. So yeah, so that was another eye-opening experience for me. And the third reason is, I have a sister in New York actually, and I was staying with her when I was studying in NYU, and she had a daughter then. Her eldest daughter was like 5 years old then, and I played like a pseudo mom, or sister, older sister to her daughter, and then she had her second daughter when I was still staying with her. And
Yeah,
in New York, the cost of living is super high,
yeah,
and you don't really necessarily have the help that we can easily access here. And
yeah,
definitely, my sister is one of the best moms I know, but it's not without a struggle.
yeah.
So basically, from my personal experience, what I'm saying is, I chose not to have a child because I know the responsibility that comes with it, and I would rather be part of that support system,
Yeah.
and be a great auntie. Actually, there's a
Yeah.
term for it. It's called PANK, Professional Aunt No Kids, PANK. And like, contrary to what people say, I don't feel any incompleteness or emptiness because I don't have my own kids, because my life is full with seven nieces and nephews, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like playing second mom to them, or an older
Yeah.
sister, and I feel like people can be so judgmental sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard, Rachel, oh my gosh, Grace and Joan, I've heard the worst words thrown my way. Like, someone told me, you're not a complete woman because you don't have kids, or you'll never be fulfilled, or maybe your husband is gay because he can't give you a child. And I'm like, wow, the gall of these people,
Mm.
to, like, strangers mostly, to
Yeah.
tell me these things. And I've come to a point where I used to be really mad about it, but now I'm doing this. I'm sharing my story to to tell other women and men out there that it is such a personal choice. And what's important is, I know my truth,
Yeah.
and like, I'm very happy with my decision, and
Yeah.
I can be nurturing and motherly in many
Yeah.
many different ways.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective to have. And John, we'd love to have you share about you having two kids. How old are they, and what was it like, juggling work with family? And especially with working moms, you also take on a lot of mental load, invisible workload that you have with the family responsibilities that is beyond just birthing a kid. What is it like for you in your journey?
Yeah. So I have a 3.5-year-old son. He's actually almost 4. I keep on saying he's 3.5 because I don't want to admit that he's getting older. He's turning 4 next month, actually. And then my daughter is 5. And, I had them at a really interesting time. I mean, when we started Bumo, my son was only 3 months old at that time. And my
Yeah.
co-founder Marcel, was pregnant with her second child. And so having them, it's never easy, right? Because there's like this expectation on you, as a mom, as a mother, right? To take on a lot of the, I guess, like childbearing, even if you're really, really busy, right? There's just so much of that. And I don't want to say it's a burden, but it's something that you definitely do carry, right? Um, and so it's incredibly hard. I mean, I feel really lucky, kind of like what Jillian was saying with like when you have a support system there, it's easier. I can't imagine me being away from my in-laws or from my parents and being able to raise my kids. So I feel
Yeah.
very fortunate to have my mom, my dad, my mother-in-law around. But it is very challenging. I mean, right now my kids are sleeping at 6 a.m. And then I know that after they wake up, I have to make their bento boxes while like watching my Slack on my Apple Watch, and then get them to school because every morning they tell me they want me to take them to school, and then I go to
Yeah.
work, and then I unplug from like 6 to 9, and that's like where I put my phone down, or I try to really hard, and then after 9, that's when I work again. And it's hard because you're a working mother, but you never hear about the working dad, right?
Yeah.
um you're the mom, or you're the CEO who works. Oh, great job. Like, that's fantastic. How do you do it all? But nobody asks a CEO dad, how do you do it all, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have that expectation. And so with that expectation comes a lot. And so, for me, kind of like what Grace was saying too, it's okay to not be okay, right?
Mm.
And I'm very open and honest about, it's not perfect. It's hard many days, sometimes more days than it's easy.
Mm.
But you just try your best and give yourself grace, right?
Mm.
Permission, like what Jillian was saying, just permission to just take a breath, right? To fail, but hopefully fail forward. And if you fail in place, that's okay. If you want to fall back and take a nap, that's okay too.
So,
So those are
so
some of the
what do
things.
you do, Joan, for example? I'm really curious to learn from you too. What do you do when your day or when a season gets too overwhelming?
I cry. I mean, sometimes I just cry. I have a good cry, and it's
I'm a
okay to
crier.
feel. I'm very raw and open about it.
Just let it out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I cry, or mental health is very important. So I was part of a founders therapy group where we would meet and we would talk very openly. I also have, an executive coach who's basically my therapist. I have another therapist, that I meet with to talk about therapy, personal therapy. And
Mm.
I'm very open about that because, mental health is something that affects my family on both sides. And, knowing that in the stigma in Asian culture too with mental health, right? I want to embrace it and I want to be open about it because taking care of
Yeah,
yourself is so important inside and out.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that. Grace, how about you? I know it's not been easy. 2 boys in 4 years.
2 boys in 2 years.
Oh my God, time flies. 2 boys in 2 years. Tell us about it, and how has that also, changed the way you live your life, and basically the way you think about the road ahead, the long term, what success means to you.
I think something that we probably all resonate with is just the last 2 to 3 years being absolutely turning our worlds upside down. I feel almost fortunate that this has occurred at a time where my kids are not old enough to be in school. And, I hear so many parents these days being like, oh, I'm just worried that my kid won't, he'll fall back or he'll fall behind and he's not getting enough
Yeah.
whatever he needs at school. And I get it in a way because my older son is also going to like a nursery, and every time he goes, it's not just about, oh, we're trying to push our kids to learn. No, it's like he's so happy just being in an environment with kids the same age,
Yeah.
hanging out. And I think something that I've learned in this time is just how to be patient and be very perseverant as a parent,
Mm.
because if it weren't for the time, I also wouldn't be able to find who I am as a mother. And something that my husband actually has said to me is a little bit morbid, but you won't leave this world regretting which job you didn't take or which money you didn't earn, but you will definitely regret the time that you didn't spend with your family. And once he said that, I was like, okay, that's it. I know what I need to do right now. I need to be with them. Even if luckily, I'm not with them 24 hours, the time that I spend with them has to be quality. You know, if I'm not at work, I want to I had work this morning. When I came home, I was like, Mommy's just got a shower and then I'm back to you guys, you know, like wait for me. And I treasure it so much, you know. It's really, I'm sure you've heard it too, that, you know, as the kids get older, they'll have their own friends. They won't even want you to hang out with them. So it's like, come to mama. Mama's here.
Yeah.
Transition has been tough, but I'm also really happy about it now. Like, I think I'm in a good place now with it.
So what happens though, Grace? I'm sure, and I imagine that there might be times where even in my journey, if I choose to sacrifice something to spend more time with my family or my son, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm missing out, or I wonder, you know, am I missing out? Do you ever feel like that? And how do you, you know, recalibrate?
I mean, I'm human, and I think something terrible that I do is I do compare myself often with either who I was before, the work that I had before, or just with other people, right? It's so easy to go online and be like, oh, so-and-so is doing this, and so-and-so is, you know, pushing forward with something that you might have been doing. Like maybe they got a role that you really wanted or, you know, have thought about. And at those times, I really just have to hold myself together and tell myself, hey, remember, you made this decision for a good reason, you processed it, and this might be happening, and you might have these emotions. That's okay. Sometimes I might cry. Most often I cry, you know, I kind of get into my zone. And then once that's done, I'm like, okay, I get it now, and I know what I need to get forward. And it's that feeling, but it's also reminders to myself, stop doing that, you know? And it's hard, but you have to have that message. Stop comparing, stop, you know, being envious or jealous or anything like that. Be who you are. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and one thing that I hear very strongly from all three of you is that, you know, the importance of a support system, and especially your partners, right? They have played such an integral part in your journey, and you also really being able to pursue what you want to pursue, whether it be, you know, a career, being child-free, and also or being just a mom. I think that has been so important in your journey as well. I want to talk about, you know, dealing with pressures that come from outside, right? Like societal pressure, peer pressure of different kinds, and especially with social media today. How do you deal with pressures on, you know, for example, the expectations of what a mom should look like, what a working mom should look like, or even what a career woman today should look like? How do you deal with that? And especially Jillian, maybe I'll start with you. You know, you mentioned earlier that, you know, sometimes there were hurtful comments that, oh, you're not a complete woman. How do you deal with all of that? I can't imagine what you must have gone through.
Yeah, definitely it's important to know your truth, like what I mentioned. I mean, at first I was affected, like you'd want to fight back. Unfortunately, those comments were uttered when I was in a professional work setting, and I couldn't exactly be unprofessional like them and answer back during that moment. But you know, like I think it's so important to know who you are and your purpose and your truth, and that will definitely make you also understand where these people are coming from. And you know, like I think social media, you mentioned the pressures of like expectations of society, and especially on social media. I feel like it's important to note that it's always the highlight reel that we see, right? It's always the good stuff that we see on social media. It's filtered. Even if the hashtag is unfiltered or no filter, it's filtered. And you know, it's like, it's so it's unrealistic. And these expectations are things that we shouldn't set up as a goal for ourselves, because you know, we don't know all of the things that happen behind the scenes for these highlight reels to happen, right? Like we didn't see their hardships, we didn't see what they went through for them to reach these things that they're posting about. And I think as women, we're also so hard on ourselves. Like, I do agree with Grace that it's almost normal for us to compare ourselves to
Yeah.
Yeah.
each other on social media, because it's like, and there's that constant pressure to create content, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I didn't post anything today. Maybe I should, or like, because everyone else is posting something. Like, there's that pressure all the time. And I really do
Yeah.
think we should be kinder to ourselves. And, like, it's hard. It's hard. As I am saying this, I do acknowledge that it's super hard to, like, deal with that kind of pressure. But I think you have to go back to giving yourself time to breathe and take a break and just revisit who you really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, how about you? Do you struggle in your journey, and yeah, how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, the external pressures are definitely, out there, right? I mean, in terms of just the expectation of women and what we're able to do, what we're supposed to do, right? Kind of like fighting back to that is really hard. And kind of what Jillian's saying too, it's you see the highlight reel of everybody's life. And as much as we know inside that it's just a highlight reel, right? It's not real life. It's this like very much curated life of somebody else. You can't unsee it sometimes, right? It still comes at you. And so, the external pressure is so hard. I remember, just hearing from not only media and society, but even my own family growing up very traditionally, where I remember my dad, I love you, Dad, if you hear me, but, he would tell me, he's like, oh, men, they don't like women who work like this. And I'm like, okay, Dad. And so,
Oh.
that's a very much a big thing, right? And it's
Wow.
like I hear my dad, and now he's very proud of me, right? And very excited for the things that I do. But, growing up in my 20s, because I've been working like this since, I was 20. And, just hearing that and hearing about what I was supposed to do, or my expectation being a wife and a mom, it's really hard. And that kind of goes back to, I'm going to add another sort of like emphasis to this is mental health and taking care of yourself, and just being okay of not being okay, right? And I think when you bottle it up and you have to be okay, you have to put a smile on your face, every second of every single day. I think it's okay to give yourself permission to feel. And I just want to say that one more time because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Grace, for yourself too, how do you overcome all that? I mean, it is especially for you, someone who's also in the limelight. How do you also overcome all the external pressure that is imposed on you?
Yeah. I feel like it's such a, I guess, frustrating thing to hear that people think, you chose to be in the public eye, you chose to be in this industry, so you should be okay with people saying so and so and so about you and judging you, putting you on a pedestal or putting you down, like all of these things. And I'm like, why? What we chose was a career that we loved. We chose to be an actress or host, something that we were able to work on a skill. And I feel like that's just as it's the same as any other job out there, right? So why does
Yeah.
it make any different? First of all, and even to this day, I must say I have improved over the years, but even to this day, a comment that is uncalled for or just hateful or mean, I just go, why? Like, if you can choose to be things in this world, can you not be kind and gentle and considerate and compassionate? Why do you
Yeah.
choose to be mean, right? It's just takes so much effort. Maybe more to be mean because you got to plan all how you're going to say whatever you need to say to me. So, I mean, it's hard. And when that time comes, I do have to tell myself, I have so many people around me who know who I am, know
Yeah.
what I stand for,
Yeah.
and cliche as it is, they love me, and
Yeah.
so I will be empowered by that. You just keep filling yourself with the people who are supportive of that, and you also have to be honest. Like, if people give you criticism and it's constructive and it's good, I do listen. I'm not like, okay,
Yeah.
bad negativity. Like, I think that's also something that you have to be very honest with yourself about. But other than that, like what we've been reiterating in this conversation, be kind to yourself. be kind to others, and hopefully that way we can push along this world in a better way. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for
Rachel,
sharing all.
if I may add to what they said.
Please.
Yeah. So I feel like the expectations and the pressure can also come from how we were raised. Like, for example, I shared with you that, like when I cut my hair. So my mom is very traditional. Like, she would want me to have long hair all the time. And, even the way, like, she would give me tidbits of advice, like, you don't laugh that way. You don't sit that way. You have to dress a certain way, especially, I don't know if it's a Filipino thing, but
Yeah.
like there's just really a lot of pressure to be a certain way growing up, and you have to be very feminine, you have to be very, like, etiquette, everything has to be on point. And like I grew up like that. I was always guarding myself, like, am I acting a certain way that my mom would approve of? And I think if you're raised like that, you have a lot of unlearning to do as you grow up. And as women in general, we have a lot of unlearning to do because of what society has imposed on us. And, like, when I cut my hair, it was like a form of rebellion, almost, like like freeing, really. And I've always wanted to have a pixie cut. And in my 30s, I told myself, okay, that's my deadline. When I turn 30, I'm gonna cut it all off, and I'm gonna, like, just, this is like my dream hair, so I'm just gonna do it, even though my mom doesn't want it. So it's really,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you've seen the Joy Luck Club, or you've read it, but
Yeah.
oh my gosh, we, like, our moms have such a big influence on us. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
my mom, by the way. Hi, Mom.
Great
Thank you
hair.
for Yeah, you look great, Jillian.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
we're going to take some questions from the Q&A segment now. So this one here, what's your thought on being a mom and building a career at the same time, right? I think a lot of mom out there really needs to choose between not missing out on watching the kids grow up and at the same time focusing on the career. So maybe Joan, you want to take this because I think it's so also super relevant to what you're going through. I imagine having Bumo is like having a third child, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like having more children because I actually so Bumo has a daycare preschool component, and
Awesome.
I actually go in there and actually hold the babies, physically hold the babies. That's my morning routine. I come in, I say hi to the staff, I go back to the babies, and I hold them. And it's really fun. And so it is hard because but I feel so lucky. I have a very unique situation because the company I started it's for kids and kids in my demographic. So my children are so integrated into my work, right? From the content we produce online, they watch it, they do the online classes. They're so excited. My daughter asks me, which Bumo are we going to today, mommy? And then one time I remember she told me, mommy, stop making more Bumos. You're gonna be so tired. And I was like, well, what if I make 1 million Bumos? And she's like, well, then I guess I have to go to 1 million Bumos now and see all of them. And so I'm very lucky in that sense. And I can't imagine if I were doing something different, like prop fintech or something that has nothing to do with children, how it would be. But I think one thing that I would like to say though is I do try very, very hard to be integrate into my children's lives. And I think a lot of the times we catch ourselves saying, oh, I'm missing out on this opportunity, I'm losing out on this. But I think we should change the way we say that and say instead, I'm gaining this moment with my children, I'm gaining this moment for myself, I'm gaining this moment with my partner, with my family, instead of starting it off by saying we're missing something, right? I know it's hard, and naturally you just say, I'm losing out on this, I'm moving this investor meeting, I'm not meeting with this enterprise partner because I have to go to my daughter's tennis practice or their jiu-jitsu practice or whatever it is, but I'm really gaining that experience too. Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that, Joan. It reminded me also of recently, I learned how to reframe my mind from I get to do this versus I have to do this, right? Like you said, I get to pitch to investors versus I have to pitch to investors. I get to pick Ollie up from school versus I have to. And I think a simple switch like that also reminds us of how fortunate we really are to get to do what we want to do. Thank you for sharing that. We will go to the next question. And this is from Crystal. I'm just going to quickly pin the question here. So maybe Grace, you want to take this. Crystal says, I would love to hear, have you ever been pressured or feel pressured by the expectations from others, even, on what how you should behave as a mom or a wife? And how do you not let these expectations affect you?
Ooh, I think I've felt expectations from the day I joined a beauty pageant. Because
How long ago was this?
8, 9 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't do the math, but I think that there are certain expectations that people, first of all, consider for public figures, things that you should stand for, speak out of, a certain way that you should act, a certain way that you can talk, just everything. I feel like ever since I've entered this, this point in my life, I've had a lot of expectations go around, and I also have a lot of expectations on myself because of it. Once I've become a mom, I think because my mom herself was always a very open-minded mother, so I almost adapted that and adopted that into my own routine quite naturally, as we all do. We are very affected by how they have chosen to raise us, and if that's something we respect, then that's something that we take on as well. But I guess it was also because I grew up in a more Western culture. A lot of people had expectations that I should not do certain things because I am still, of an Asian culture. And I think that it sometimes gets to a point where I just go, guys, just let me be my own way and let me be my own mom as I do, and give you the respect of that. So give me the respect of that too. And I do understand that some of it might be for my own good, but let me choose, let me have that decision and choose how to raise my kids, as even my mom would. Even my mom would tell me, like, I know she's the grandmother to my kids, but even she gives me the respect of that. And how much, like, they want to tell you exactly how you should, raise your kids. But I feel like that's just, something that now that I have the chance to speak about, and hope that people can give me this respect that I hope all deserve as well.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing, Grace. Let's go to the next question, and we'll love to hear Jillian's thoughts on this, right? This is a question that says, what do you wish more women would talk about openly?
There
What
are
is
so many things. I think more women should be more unapologetic for the choices that they make, for sure. Whether that's being, like, child free, or choosing their career first, or being a full-time mom, or, like, whatever path you take as a woman, I think we should be able to talk about it freely and free ourselves from the expectations of other people and just live our truth, I think. Like, back in Cosmo, since the Philippines is such a conservative country, like, we would always write about reproductive health. We would always write about, like, your body, your choice. You should be responsible. You should be able to choose what you want, and do what you want with your body. And, like, we're still getting there, at least here. And I think women should be free to talk about these topics, not just that, but like any other taboo, quote unquote, topics that we have deemed unspeakable, because there's just not enough conversation about it. So for sure, when I wish women would have more of that courage and support, not just from women but from men too, to be heard and to be able to speak up.
Amazing. And one last question from me, right? I think what I've learned from all of you today is really to live our own truth, right? I think it's to make the choice we think is best for ourselves, for our family, for the people around us, and to live our own lives. All of us here, three of you especially, are so similar yet so different, right? You have your own paths, and there is no right or wrong in life. And I thought it would be nice to end with all of you, sharing one advice that you have with the women out there who are listening to you, who also have found inspiration in your journey and your story. How can you encourage all of us to have the courage to bloom where we're planted and really walk our own path? And at the end of the day, find comfort in knowing that this is the best choice that we're making for ourselves. We don't always have to follow what society wants us to do. We don't always have to follow what we're pressured by peers or external expectations. How would you encourage the women out there to just live their truth? Anyone can start.
I would say lead with yourself, right? Lead with what you want. And that also, I want to acknowledge is a privilege too, right? Sometimes, right? To be able to just do what you want to do. I know so many women in so many parts of the world can't do that, right? But if you have the privilege to just do what you want to do, lead with yourself first. It's a career path that you're passionate about and lead with passion. I think that's really important. I'm a firm believer in doing things rooted in passion and joy. I've been very fortunate in being able to just stay convicted in that. But if you can do that, and that kind of bleeds into other parts of your life too, in terms of your partnership, in terms of you being a dutiful mother, a dutiful aunt, a dutiful uncle, whatever it is. I think leading with passion first and yourself first is really important, as hard as it can be.
Yes. Amazing.
Thank you, Joan.
I definitely
Grace?
second that, Joan.
Gillian,
Sorry, go ahead, Grace.
No.
go for it, Gillian.
Yeah. So I feel like women should champion their narrative or their story by doing what lights them up. And when women do what lights them up, and as Joan said, if they follow their joy, they are able to show other women out there that their path is possible. They become the North Star for other women to follow and to also pave their own paths. And I think it's also equally important for us to recognize that we can change our minds at any time. And we shouldn't be caught up or bound by the choices that we made, the decisions that we made in the past. We can always change our minds. And there's this, I'm on Instagram too much, but like there's another quote that I want to share with you. So it's this artwork by Zaza Illustration. And it says, "I am learning to love the sound of my feet walking away from things not meant for me." And I think that's such a powerful quote. And we should recognize that we have the power to walk away from any situation, relationship, or role that no longer serves us. And the moment that we stand up and speak up and choose us, that's when we break the bias. So definitely, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Gillian. Grace, you have any advice or last words for us?
First of all, I love reading quotes, so thank you for those too. Remember when we told me how courageous strangers can be? I'll remember that one. For me, I would say probably I would sum it up in two things. Because I actually remembered yesterday, I was just making a recipe and I just posted online and it was fun. And a mom actually from the States, she DM'd me and she said, "You're going to read this, but I just want to say, like, where do you find time to take care of your kids and cook? And you seem like you're, having fun. Oh, I wish I could just, be just like you." And instantly, like, instead of being like, "Oh, thank you so much," like, I was like, no, wait a minute. Why are you thinking this way? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, I want to hear about this. And I feel like we can feel appreciation for what other people have, what other people are doing. And then start looking into your life and finding blessings there too. I think we seldom do that. It's always about what we don't have and what we need more of or what we want more of. But it's about like, wait, what do we have already? And as you guys shared, families that support you, the sisters that you have, like all of those things are like, we need to check it off and be like, man, I'm so happy and so blessed we have that. I feel happy that you guys have it. I feel happy that I have certain things. And I feel like that it's something that we really need to forth, you know. Remember what we have, be grateful for them, and also be happy for others for what they have. And then that's where we stop comparisons and stop, you know, feeling inadequate. And I think it's important.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? In this journey to support each other, to encourage each other. Thank you so much, Grace, John, Jillian, for, you know, sharing a piece of yourself with all of us today. I think we've all been so inspired by your journey, your stories, your tips. Keep doing you and keep being you. I think one thing that I took away is that, yeah, I mean, just focus on your journey and checking in with yourself all the time. I think that is super important. The other thing is also self-care, you know, whatever it looks like for you, to cry, to go to therapy. I think that's something that's also very important for you, to constantly calibrate and manage ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to ensure that we are taken care of before we take care of everything else. I think that's so important. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, and thank you for, you know, breaking the bias and showing us that it's possible to choose to do and choose to make the choices that we want to make. I think before we end off, we also wanted to share that, you know, we have a card deck. Love Bonito, we have a card deck that we're specially prepared for all of you who are listening with us today. We are going to send the link over in the chat. You can download it. You can, you know, gather a few friends, answer some of the questions that have been thoughtfully created for you in the card deck to get to know yourselves better, to get to know each other better. If not, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Grace, John, Jillian, for joining us. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. We'll continue to support you and root for you in your journey. And yeah, that's all that we have for you tonight. Please join us in the next few sessions that we have for other conversations. If not, have a good night. And John, have a great start to your day. I hope that your kids are still asleep while you're... Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and journey with us. Thank you.
Much love. Bye.
Bye.